Sarah sat at the back of the classroom, her pencil tapping nervously against the desk. The room was filled with the soft hum of whispers, the rustling of papers, and the occasional scrape of a chair leg across the floor. The clock ticked louder than it usually did. She could hear the seconds passing, each one feeling like a small eternity. Her eyes glanced at the whiteboard at the front, where the teacher had written an equation that seemed like a foreign language to her. Sarah had always struggled with math. It was a subject that seemed to mock her, no matter how many times she tried to understand it. Her classmates had no problem. They breezed through the problems like they were second nature. But Sarah? She felt like she was always a step behind, trying to catch up, but never quite getting there. She stared down at the test paper in front of her. The answers weren't coming. The questions seemed to grow more complex as she read them over and over again. Panic started to build in her chest, tightening her lungs. She bit her lip, trying to focus, but all she could see were the blurry shapes of numbers and symbols, dancing just out of her reach. A small voice inside her mind whispered, "You can't do this. You never can." It was a voice she knew well, a voice that had followed her through every test, every challenge. The voice that reminded her of every mistake, every failure. It was the one that told her she wasn't smart enough, that she would never be good enough. She hated that voice, but somehow it always found a way to creep in. Sarah's hand shook as she looked down at the paper again. She had to do something. She couldn't just sit here forever, staring at the questions, trapped by her own doubts. Slowly, she picked up her pencil and started writing something, anything on the paper. At first, it was just random numbers and marks, but soon, the act of writing began to calm her down. The paper was no longer a wall she couldn't climb, but a surface she could take control of. Minutes passed, and the ticking of the clock seemed to slow. Sarah stopped looking at the clock, stopped listening to the sound of others around her. She focused only on the paper. One question at a time, she worked through the problems. She didn't know if they were all correct, but that didn't matter. She was moving forward. She was doing something. By the time the bell rang, signaling the end of the test, Sarah sat back in her chair. Her heart was still racing, but there was a small sense of relief. She had finished. And in doing so, she had silenced that voice in her head, if only for a moment. For the first time in a long time, she realized that it wasn't the grade that mattered. It was the courage to face the challenge, to push through the doubts, and keep going despite everything. As she stood up and collected her things, Sarah felt a small smile tug at the corners of her lips. Maybe, just maybe, she was capable of more than she had ever believed.